Chapter 4, Moisture and Atmospheric Stability. That just sounds boring, right? But it's not that boring because it means water. That's what it means. Water, 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 water. And everyone loves water, and water is my favorite topic to talk about. I love water. Alright, so when I saw something like this, I had just moved from the Great Lakes area down to Florida. In the Great Lakes area, we drink the Great Lakes, right? And so I just assumed everybody, in my limited knowledge, drank surface water. And so they introduced me to this. Okay, so if you look just at this first column here, mostly green, right? This is all of the water on Earth, right? We have oceans, which is about 97%, right? And then you have other salt water, which is about 1%. And then you have fresh water, which is about 2.5%. So I don't know about you, but I don't like drinking salt water. Right? I do like cooking with salt water, especially my pasta and my potatoes, but I don't like drinking salt water. So I am in the population that can only drink fresh water. That's 2.5% of all the water we have on Earth. All of us have to drink that. Right? Now, we're going to split that up between all of us, and this is how that fresh water gets split up. So it just starts here, right? So that 2.5 is just this column. That 2.5, out of that 2.5, 69% is stuck in glaciers and ice. 69%, like more than half, like more than 2/3 is trapped in ice. Okay? Groundwater is the other 30%, right? And then surface water, or other, is 1.2%. So I was thinking, I'm like, I drink surface water, so I drink the 1% out of that 2.5%. Now I live here in Florida, so I drink groundwater. So I drink 30%, or I have available 30% of that 2.5%. And just to give you a better idea, the surface water, where I used to drink surface water, that's the 1% of the 2.5%. Well, that gets extrapolated into this one. So, again, ice and permafrost is almost 70% of the 1% of the 2.5%. Right? So if you look at the 2.5%, it's ice. Right? And then you have lakes, which is what I used to drink water from, 21%-ish. Right? So it's 21% of the 1% of the 2%. And then this is soil moisture. And then you have swamps. And then you have rivers. And then you have other living things like us. Right? There's water in us. And then you have the atmosphere. And look at the atmosphere. I mean, these, okay, soil moisture 4, swamps 2.5, rivers 0.5, living things 0.2, 0.3, atmosphere 3%. So the atmosphere is just as big as the swamps. Right? And we live near swamps, so think about that for a minute. There is as much water in the atmosphere as there are in the swamps. Alright, so the water cycle, the hydrologic cycle, it's a cycle, right? So you get to start anywhere you want. Obvious starting point, not like there is an obvious starting point, it's a circle, but the ocean, right? So let's say you're a drop of water in the ocean. Well, you get evaporated, and then you form a cloud. We'll talk about that later. So you form a cloud, the cloud gets too heavy, and you rain down in precipitation. Now, once you get to precipitation, there's a couple different things you can do as your drop of water. You can run down and along the surface, on the surface, in the streams and rivers, and back into the ocean. That's called runoff. Or you can go down into the ground and infiltrate the ground, right? So that's called infiltration. And eventually you run back off into the oceans, and then you start again, you evaporate, you evaporate, you precipitate, you run off, and you oceans. Evaporate, precipitate, infiltrate, oceans. Evaporate, precipitate, run off, oceans. You get the idea. Alright, so water is odd, which is why I love it. Water is the only liquid on Earth in large quantities. Right? You can have it in all forms at once, right? Now, if you're like me, you have a glass of water with ice sitting on your desk as you're doing this, or near you as you're doing this, right? Did you know you have ice? There's one form. You have water, there's another form, and you have water vapor coming off of that ice and water, right? So there's 3 forms in your glass of ice or water with ice. Now, this is another weird thing. It's ice floats. Now you're like, well, duh, I know that, right? But ice is less dense, right? So therefore it floats. Most liquids, when you freeze it, will be more dense. So ice is actually less dense than the liquid. And it takes a lot of energy to change the temperature of water, right? More so than the temperature of air. This is a fun one. There's one of my favorite places on the planet, Niagara Falls. Okay. Just gorgeous. And this is Niagara Falls in the wintertime. Water freezes from the top down, which the fish are saying, hey, this is a great thing, right? Because could you imagine if it froze from the bottom up? Like those fish would not, those bottom dwellers are done for, right? I mean, fish can dive down deeper, but those bottom dwellers, well, they're stuck. So this is a good thing. Now, I mentioned ice, water vapor, and water, right? Well, here's the scientific words for you. Ice is a solid, water is liquid, water vapor is a gas. Okay, most of these you might know, but let me go over them anyway. So to go from solid to liquid, or ice to water, you have to melt it, right? So melting is the actual term. To go from liquid to gas, or water to water vapor, you have to evaporate it, right? So evaporation is the actual term. Now the other way to go from gas to liquid, you have to condense it. So condensation is the actual term. And then liquid to solid, you have to freeze it. So freezing is the actual term. So those should not be new to you. Now here's ones that might be. To go from ice, skip the liquid and go straight to gas. That's called sublimation. Okay? Now, a great example of that is dry ice. Right? Dry ice is so cool. It's just a block of ice, and then you can see the steam. It looks like steam coming off of it, right? But it is and it isn't, because it's going straight to water vapor, right? It's skipping the whole liquid. And then you have gas to solid, right? And that one is called deposition, right? That one's really fun too, to go from gas to solid. It skips the liquid phase altogether. Pretty cool.